What's up? It's Way Up with Angela Yee, and my girl Selena Hill is hanging out with me.
Yep.
Journalist extraordinaire, and we're really excited. We have so many questions for you today. We have Marjorie Mesidor here. She is the harassment slayer, but you're also the founder and chief visionary officer of Mesidor PLLC, which is a workplace discrimination law firm, employment and workplace discrimination law firm dedicated to advancing justice, equity, and accountability in the workplace. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Man, we have so many things going on, and so many people call up for Ask Yee with questions when it comes to, things that happen in the workplace and how to go about it. And we know it's something that's difficult for people to navigate.
No, absolutely. I mean, you would be surprised, even when people know they're being discriminated against, just how uncomfortable that people are even using the word discrimination, right? Most of the time when things are going on, they're like, oh, this person has a personal problem with me. I don't know what the issue is. I don't know why I'm being treated so differently. They'll run through the gamut of questions all through their head, and the very last thing that they come up with is, I think it's because I'm a woman. I think it's because I'm Black. I think it's because I am not a native. I am a foreign-born national or something like that. Yeah.
And a lot of times we can feel powerless to do anything about it. And it's interesting in this day and age that we're in right now. Selena, you were just covering a situation with Coca. What was the situation?
Yeah, so the EEOC recently filed a lawsuit against a Coca-Cola distributor for hosting a women-only networking event. The federal government is literally saying or claiming that this company discriminated against men because they were not invited on this retreat, right? Which was for, women's empowerment purposes. So, my question is, I want, as an attorney who is working to protect underrepresented groups and historically marginalized groups, what are your thoughts on this? How can both companies and these marginalized groups protect themselves when, in Trump's era, the federal government can actually sue for something like this?
Right. So a couple of different things, right? First and foremost, if a private company is putting forth programs to push forth an agenda that helps their bottom line, that happens to align with gender or race or anything like that, that is never going to be discriminatory in and of itself, right? So if you are Tampax and you are running, an empowerment group for that, it's because you sell a product that is directly geared toward women, right? That is going to be otherwise helpful and beneficial to them. Where they can run into tricky waters is because this particular administration is has taken a stance on DEI, that makes it like a 4-letter word, a very, very, like, DEI is naughty, DEI is bad for this administration. They see DEI and putting forth and pushing for the agenda of one race or one gender or one of it to be the same. So because they just take a very cookie cutter view of that, and they have the purse strings of the federal government, they can weaponize, right, an agency like the EEOC. And the EEOC only exists to investigate and research any discrimination that takes places in places that have 15 or more employees.
Okay.
So because they have that ability, they have that authority, and they have that power. If you have 15 or more employees, the EEOC can take a look at your policies, your procedures, your DEI policies, and say that, you know what, this doesn't align with what we think is appropriate or legal or any one of those things, so we're going to investigate it. But what the EEOC does not have the ability to do is declare it illegal just because they're investigating.
Okay.
So none of the laws have changed. None of the way that we look at the law that says that when marginalized populations come together in order to create affinity groups and to otherwise elevate agendas and the stuff that in and of itself is not discriminatory, that has not changed.
Right.
But the government's ability to direct the EEOC and say, you know what, we're not going to look at these transgender issues anymore. We're going to focus on just the DEI policies that are focused just for women or just for people of color, because we're calling that illegal and discriminatory. even though they are saying that they can, and they can do that, they can go in and investigate, and they can make life very uncomfortable for Coca-Cola, they cannot declare it illegal, though. That only the law can do. Only the court can do. But they'll just make it uncomfortable. And nobody wants the EEOC in their backyard.
And it's kind of like a warning for other companies, too.
Exactly.
When that happens, do you want to have to deal with all of this?
Exactly. And this administration has been very effective by saying we are going to throw our entire weight and authority behind what we can do to make it as uncomfortable for you as possible so that you can do what we want you to do.
Yeah, and to Angela's point, like it's definitely setting a precedence so that, because we see a lot of companies are no longer enacting DEI policies. Correct. But with the lawsuit, they're saying the company violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act because men supposedly were not invited to this women's retreat.
During work hours.
During work hours. So they're saying that's the case. And I'm saying like the pendulum has definitely shifted, because instead of protecting women, minorities, immigrants, now it's like they're attacking them, and they're using the same laws that were created to protect these groups now to attack workers while they are on the job. Like, how do we navigate that?
So a few different things. With this particular case, I don't know like all the ins and outs of like what kind of program it was, under what, like how they were able to otherwise finagle it, before or anything like that. But if the only criteria for you to go to this retreat is your gender, then that is discriminatory. If the only criteria, right? You're a woman, you're in, you're a guy, you're out, that on its face absolutely is discriminatory. However, right, a lot of the programs that we're talking about, like the DEI programs, the affinity programs, a lot of them have to do and invite anyone who is in support of anything that is going to otherwise elevate, support the cause of, and the issues of the affinity group. So it doesn't become a situation where it's only men versus women. This is a women's retreat for issues that are particularly important to women. If you are a man and you support that, and issues are of women are important to you, you are welcome to come.
Right.
This is what makes it okay, because it's not about the setting up to who's invited and who's not based on gender, but what is the platform? What is the agenda here?
We have International Women's Day here right now, and we are doing all these different panels, and it specifically says men are invited.
Right. They have to highlight that now.
Right. It specifically says that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have people who have different philosophies about it. You'll have men who's like, you know what, I'm a feminist too. I want to be in the room and I want to help. And then you'll have other men who will say, you know what, this is a private space for women, for them to share, and maybe in an intimate setting with only things that they believe that other women would share. I'm going to respect it, and I'm just going to refrain.
But you're invited.
Right, but you're invited.
As long as they're invited.
Right, exactly. As long as it's not a prohibition saying that you cannot come because you are a male.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, this is just so much going on. I do want to know, in this era right now of what's going on, it's a lot of things have been unprecedented. A lot of things have been rolled back. How has your job and what you do for people, what are the shifts that you've seen?
Right. So unfortunately, I'm busier than ever.
Right.
And I say that unfortunately because I would prefer not to be doing this work. I would love if there was no discrimination, no sexual harassment, and I was completely obsolete. That's actually very much how our firm runs. We want to work ourselves out of existence, but we are busier than ever because now what people are doing is they're taking this new anti-DEI stance and they're using that to bolster their already existing prejudice and discrimination. So now they just think that it's okay. They think that
they feel protected.
Exactly. They feel protected. And then on the other side, those who are doing this work don't feel protected.
Right.
And they feel like they have to work on eggshells. So that changes the level of aggression with which they seek change. It changes with the type of programs that they're putting forth and the kind of communities that they are supporting, because everybody is running scared. So what we're seeing is things like 600,000 Black women have been completely disenfranchised out of the workplace last year.
Absolutely. We were just talking about that before you walked in.
Right. So they're like, why is that the case? Well, let's look at it. Statistics say that Black women are the most educated demographic in the United States. So if this is all truly based on a meritocracy, you would find that the qualifications are there, the education are there. Why is it matching up? Because what people are doing is because they are rolling back the support, the resources, the financing, the headcounts on these DEI programs. They're doing that to a lot of the time. You'll find that Black women are the one and onlys, right?
Yeah.
They're the one and only females in this, or they're the one and only Black person in this. So as not to rival the IRE of the administration, people are pulling back those things too. So then one after the other, each one of these individuals are ending up without a job under the excuse of the temperature has changed. The political climate has shifted.
Right.
I cannot tell you how many women who I have counseled who have received letters that have literally said, the political climate has shifted in regards to your blah, blah, blah. And therefore, we are going to be expending resources in X, Y, and Z on other things.
So wild.
Yeah.
The most unqualified people work in our government. Which is crazy.
That part.
Right?
Clock it.
It's like, because I think they make it seem like DEI means it's unqualified people in positions, when the truth to the matter is that for the bottom line, diversity with qualified people in those positions is great for any company, and numbers reflect that.
Right.
And so that's what's really wild to me, because it doesn't mean that you're not qualified to be there.
Absolutely. All of that. The only thing that DEI really means is that you're going to be taken a look at.
Yeah.
That's all. You still have to meet all the criteria for the job. It just means that you're otherwise going to take a look at. You know what? Let's consider it like this. The three of us are friends and we have a company. Mm-hmm. And I say, Angela, who does your marketing? And you were like, oh, I know so-and-so. So-and-so does my marketing. Who does your whatever? And you're like, oh, so-and-so does my security. These are people who you have relationships with.
Right.
It wouldn't be uncommon for the person who does your marketing to be a person of color, or for the person who does your security to be a female. And now we continue to work and expand on our own, based on our own networks. Mm-hmm. This is what naturally happens. Right. What DEI is forcing companies to say is like, you know what? Angela, I can't just rely on your recommendation for a marketing person.
Let's open it up.
Or your recommendation for a security person. We are 3 women of color already in this company. We think there would be value to have other voices, maybe different religions, maybe different genders, maybe different races.
With different perspectives.
With different perspectives that we think that would be of value. So instead of us just, kicking it to anybody who we have on our Rolodex, we're going to make a deliberate effort and reach out to as many qualified marketing people, as many qualified security people as we can, so that we can get a robust, roster of individuals to look at, so we can do it the best way for, at the table.
Right.
Yeah. That's all that DEI is saying. There is literally nothing more than that. The only thing that inclusion does that's a little bit more is it makes us always think of other.
Yeah.
Right.
Case in point. Is this studio open on Christmas Day? On December 25th?
I think it is, yeah.
Okay, bad example. And I was just like, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was closed on Christmas Day.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we live in the US and predominantly we are very Christian focused, around that focus. For somebody who's Jewish, for somebody who's Muslim, for somebody who's Buddhist, they have other holidays that they don't get a day off for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then you say, as inclusion, as part of our commitment to inclusion, we know Buddhist holidays exist and Jewish holidays exist. Instead of everybody just getting off on Christmas, everybody has a floating holiday.
Right.
And whatever religion or whatever they want to use it for, they use it. If it's for Hanukkah, if it's for Diwali, whatever it is you use it for, that's inclusion. That's just taking into consideration. You know what? There are other people besides me.
Everybody is not me.
Exactly.
Right.
And this may be important to them. Let me take a look at that.
Marjorie, what got you into this particular specialty?
I mean, it kind of fell into my lap a little bit. I when I was in law school, I loved con law, constitutional law. I thought like all about the civil rights movements and religious freedoms and all those types of cases. I love those because I felt like they touched everybody's like life in a way that was really impactful and fundamental. And I could always get like really impassioned about it. But what really drives me in this particular work is that I hate bullies.
Okay.
I hate bullies. And because money makes the world go round, and because money is what we use to feed our families, to run our lifestyles, to pursue our dreams, our employers are in a very unique position in our lives. They hold a lot of power over us. And don't get me wrong, not every employer is bad, right? There are great employers who they work with their employees. They're like, you know what, you bring something to us, we bring something to you, and they make it balanced and fair. But the overwhelming majority is that people are disproportionately, imbalanced with their employers. And a lot of people abuse that. And they abuse it by making people do things that they know that they should not be doing. They abuse it by taking credit for other people's work, by diminishing other people's work. Again, if we went back to the company, the fake company that we were starting, maybe Angela's like, you know what, my marketing person is also my cousin. So we got to hire her or him or whomever, and we're going to bring them in. And I said, but maybe your cousin doesn't know what they're doing. So we're going to
probably not.
So now we're going to use this other marketing company, make them do all the work, pay them half the money.
And my cousin is going to be.
And there is the one who's going to be reaping all the benefits.
Right.
Right? This is just normal human dynamic.
And sometimes people feel like it just is what it is.
Right.
This is corporate America. Deal with it.
Right.
And so the question is, how do people know when it's an issue? Because I have to imagine that it is, and I'm sure we've all been in situations that we felt like there's something wrong here. When is it when people come to you, and sometimes people don't know, is this even a discrimination case?
And I had a personal, just to piggyback off of that, there was, speaking of that power dynamic, an employer of mine, this is in the past, there was a person in power who hit on me, right? Who made it very clear that they wanted to date me, right? I dismissed it, laughed it off, kept it moving. A colleague, he did the same thing to a colleague. She reported it because she felt unsafe and harassed. When is it actual harassment? Because for me, I kind of felt like, let me just, brush this joker off.
Right.
And
He's
do
trying
my
to
job.
shoot his shot.
Right. He's trying to shoot his shot. He is in a position of power, and I don't want to jeopardize anything. So I was like, in my mind, I was just like, it is what it is.
Okay.
But she reported it and then did face some retaliation.
Right. So the answer to both of your questions, number one, is you really have to trust your instincts and intuition. There is something that I feel that everybody feels when something's going on that just doesn't feel right. They may not know what it is, right? They may not be able to call it. They may not be able to say it's discrimination, it's sexual harassment or whatever. But the moment that you feel that something is not right, you should trust your instinct and watch it. That doesn't mean as soon as you think something's wrong that you go running to HR.
Right.
And here's the difference. You have the autonomy, right, to decide what you are comfortable with and what you are not. Okay. So when it comes to discrimination and harassment, there are two parts that the law looks at. It looks at objectively if it's harassing, and then they look at subjectively if it's harassing, right? Let's look at the subjective part. As women, we get hit on a lot. And if you're comfortable standing your ground and standing your nose and saying no and leaving it at that, it may not offend you that somebody even tried, right? But there are others who think this is the workplace and it's completely inappropriate because of this power dynamic for you to ever even approach me.
Right.
Right? And that person that person has the right and the autonomy to do that too. What makes it actually harassment is the lack of consent. The fact that she was hit on and complained, that wouldn't have made it harassment, because if he asked the question and she said no and he accepted her no, then it's not harassment, right? But it's the retaliation that came after she told them the no that made this a wrong issue, because she should not be penalized, right, for saying her no.
But it wasn't for saying no, it was for reporting it, right?
Yes. Once it got reported and escalated, she felt like there was retaliation when it came to just opportunities and just like the tone, the way she was treated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And all of that is 100% illegal. Mm-hmm. She cannot be punished for reporting it. She cannot even be punished for reporting it legitimately, but getting it wrong. Mm-hmm. Let's say he wasn't even really hitting on her and she got it wrong completely, complained to HR, they did an investigation. He said, I wasn't hitting on her, and they found out, whatever. He really wasn't hitting on her. But then he's like, you're going to complain to me to HR? I got your number.
Right.
That's still retaliation. So long as the person had a good faith belief that what they were complaining about was legitimate, that it was legitimately sexual harassment, legitimately discriminatory. Going back to your question now, when you were talking about like, how do I know when it's the right time to complain? When it starts taking away things like from your money, your package, the kind of projects you're being assigned to, in your case, like the slot that you get, you go from being, right in the middle of the day to something at 4:00 in the morning. You're like, wait a second.
Right. How did I get bumped down?
As soon as it starts to feel like the way that you're being treated is not only along the lines of race, gender, or something like that, but it also begins to impact the way you do your job, how you show up for your job, how it impacts your money, your paid time off, your overall treatment, and everything like that. That's when it's time to really complain. And I always encourage people, take note. Mm-hmm. Take note. You don't have to go to HR for each and every single thing. And there's so many things, even from a technology perspective, that are really great. Like there's this app called Work Receipts, right? So it's a free download app that I recommend to all of my clients and prospective clients. You download it on your phone, it's free. You use it and you can log in everything that's going on at work. So maybe you just think that something's going on, but you're not really sure. You're right. Like, today they didn't give me a lunch break. Today they they put me on suspension. Today they did X, Y, and Z. So, but now by the time that you go to HR, you have a list of things with date and timestamp of everything that happened. Then it's up to HR to investigate to find out if it is what you think that it is.
Because, sometimes people also feel like, well, HR works for the company.
Yes, but HR, you could go to HR, you can go to a supervisor. Mm-hmm. But if you don't go to somebody...
Right, and document that.
And document it some way, then there's no possible way that it's going to stop.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And not in New York City, but in many other places, if the company is not on notice, specifically on notice that what's happening to you, then they're not liable.
Yeah.
Right?
Because people are very hesitant.
Yes. Correct. But in New York City, like if the person who's doing the harassment is a supervisor, then the company's automatically liable.
Now, Marjorie, I do want to switch gears a little bit here because there's been so much going on in the news. And I just want to get from you, you've dealt with so many different people. Mm-hmm. And even us thinking about everything like with Diddy, because I know that was something that you have a lot of information about. Mm-hmm. But when we think about women who have been in situations, and men too, right? And then people wait years, decades to come forward. And I always see people say, why didn't they say something when this happened? Why didn't this person say something right away? Why are all these people coming out of the woodworks now? And they think it's just like this person was trying to buy a network or, they always have a reason why. I just want to get from you, from people that you've spoken to, why is it that people wait sometimes so long before they even come forward with something that might have happened a long time ago? And then a lot of times it's a snowball effect.
Right. Fear of retaliation. Fear of not being believed, which is actually a bigger fear than retaliation. Mm-hmm. You know how many women have sat across from me and said, who's going to believe me? I'm a single mom. And I was like, wait a second. Like, let's roll this back. Your word is enough. But not everybody gets treated like their word is enough. There are people who believe that unless they can get 2 or 3 to back up what they're saying, that their word is not enough. This is where I feel like the Me Too movement really did help. It showed us that our word is enough. And when you speak out, then you get courage to speak out, and you get courage to speak out. Because if I'm the only one who's suffering and I say nothing, all three of us could be suffering from the same person. But when we start to talk about it, there's a shared strength that comes into it, and now we can advance forward, because they may be able to ignore me, but if it's 3 or 4 or 50, then it's harder to ignore. So the fear of not being believed is so strong, it's palpable.
Yeah. And sometimes legally, it's also, say you sue for harassment and you don't win, then people think that means you were lying and it didn't happen, when a lot of times it just means you couldn't necessarily prove that legally.
Right. And the thing is, and that's another thing too, is that almost in cases where there's sexual harassment, it is almost always a he said, she said, she said, she said, right? It's always going to be one person's word against the other. But that's what juries are for.
Right.
And the jury can decide, I believe you and I don't believe you. The idea that you need additional proof than your word is not true. It's helpful. Don't get me wrong. I cannot understate that if you have a recording, a text, or anything that supports you in any way, it's going to be helpful.
A witness.
But I tell clients who sit across me all the time, your word is enough evidence. You're going to be sworn under oath, just like they're going to be sworn under oath. They're going to say what happened in that room. You're going to say what happened in that room. And the jury's going to believe somebody.
You know, I'm so glad you said that your word is enough, because in my mind, I was like, if it's not documented, if I don't have a witness, I would never want to come forward, because it's like you said, your word against another. But on the flip, right? In another scenario, I know somebody who felt retaliated against. They had a workplace romance that ended poorly, and then he felt like the woman retaliated by claiming that she was forced to do certain things because he was in a position of power, and it really hurt him. And again, it was his word against hers, and there was context, right? There's nuance. It wasn't, they were in relationship. So in those type of circumstances, you know, how can the person in power be protected, but what happens?
As with anything, if you want to protect your perspective, you always want to document it in some way. If you want to protect your no, document your no. If you want to protect their yes, document their yes.
Right.
It cuts both ways. Like that work receipt app, it cuts both ways. I say that because what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Overwhelmingly, people do not make up, sexual harassment and discriminatory claims, and overwhelmingly that is not the norm. But we cannot ignore that exists. Right? So that's why there has to be a legal process. That's why there has to be a proof. And that's why a jury gets to decide who's telling the truth and who is not. There are attorneys who will not take cases that is only based on their client's word, no matter how good they think that it is. They just simply will not do it. And that's where people get the messaging that their word is not enough.
Right.
Because the more I'm able to establish what you said with something other than your word, my risk goes down. If you told me he said this and he said that and you show me a text, I don't even have to believe you. The jury doesn't even need to like you. It's in a text.
Yeah.
Right?
There's no...
Exactly. Exactly. That's all really the proof they need. But now, if I go through this entire process and we get to the jury and now the jury doesn't like you and all I have is your word...
That's a
high risk. That's high risk, high reward. It could go either way. It could go either way.
I want to ask you this too, because here's another thing in the work that I do and seeing what people have to say. Civil cases where people are, trying to get a settlement for a certain amount of money or get paid, people also tend to look at that as this person's just trying to get a payday, right? And so I want you to break that down too, because I feel like there's a misconception about why people file civil cases first.
Right. So not everything that is discriminatory or harassing is criminal. Not everything that's discriminatory or harassing is criminal. So criminal has one standard. Above a reasonable doubt, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard for criminals. So that's high, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt is, if we're going to do in percentages, let's say beyond a reasonable doubt is probably like 85% sure.
Right.
Civil, where what you get is money, not jail or anything like that. That standard is more likely than not 49-51.
Okay.
So if you have to prove your case 75-85 versus 49-51, which one you're going to go for? You're going to go for the 49-51 because it's easier, particularly if it's a he said, she said type of thing. Mm-hmm. So many times, even the acts that are harassing and criminal, prosecutors will decline to prosecute, or they won't charge them at the top charge. They'll do it at a lower charge for all sorts of reasons. These positions are politically elected. They have their own stats and stuff that they have to do. There's all sorts of reasons why they decide not to prosecute. And if at every time that somebody, somebody's ego was hurt and they were turned down and they did something, and it was prosecuted each and every time, then the courts would be overrun with that sort of thing.
Right.
So on the civil side, it gives you an opportunity for there to be accountability. But instead of somebody else deciding for you whether or not that person is going to be prosecuted, you are the one who gets to decide how much money is enough money. And if neither one of you can decide that, then the jury decides if any money is worth it at all. So that's why civil is an attractive alternative, because you are the one who makes the decision, not a prosecutor, and you're the one who gets to say how much is enough, not a third party. Now, a lot of people will. The other part of it with the civil prosecution is you have an opportunity to resolve it and nobody even know about it. That's good for the person who's been attacked and the person who's allegedly did the attacking.
Right.
Because the last thing, the same way that a lot of people, the same way that Diddy is getting dragged through the mud for all of the allegations, there are Diddy accusers who are equally being dragged through the mud for even bringing up the accusation.
Right.
So a lot of people said, you know what, I don't want to deal with that. This is something that impacted me. I'm in therapy. I can't work anymore. I need money for my medical bills. I need money to live. I'm going to sue for this. It's going to be quiet, and then it's all done. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I feel like people tend to look down on you if you get a payment, like a settlement, and have something to say about that. And, I want to bring this back to our theme for International Women's Day, Give to Gain and mentorship. And I want to talk about women giving their knowledge and support to one another and how that is, how can we do that more in the workplace and things you've seen?
No, absolutely. I think that we're doing it right now. Just actively and earnestly participating in these conversations and saying, you know what, the resources I have are available to you. I don't gatekeep. I don't gatekeep with what I know. I don't gatekeep with the information that's available to me. If you tell me so-and-so has a problem, I'm like, okay, let's do it. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get in. That's the level of collaboration effort that women are really leaning into all the way. And the momentum on this is incredibly significant. The same way that I can say the stat of 600,000 Black women have been forced out of the workplace is that the other millions of Black women in that same workplace are ushering their sisters in and using all of their power, dynamics, information, connections to help them come right back into the marketplace again. Because what we've realized is that collaboration is better than competition.
Right. And, along those lines, even being able to discuss salaries, because I know that's another conversation in the workplace when it comes to discrimination. And so I think that's important, too, for us to be able to discuss with each other what we're getting paid for things, too.
What we're getting paid, what kind of packages that are available, what worked for us, what didn't work for us. Because at the same time, the mentality, I think, before used to be, I have to keep this close to the vest because if I don't, then what I have is going to be attacked. What we realize, what we have is going to be attacked regardless.
Right.
There is no protection of that. So the only way we're going to protect ourselves is if we're all on one accord and we know that this is the standard and we're not accepting any less, then we force the hand. We force the hand on the other side to say, now you can't mess with either three of us, because now we're all exchanging information.
But wasn't there laws or policies that prevented employees from talking about salaries, and wasn't that lifted a few years ago?
Actually, it's actually quite the opposite. Under the NLRB, your ability to talk about your salary and workplace conditions is a right that you cannot be terminated for, you cannot be disciplined for, or anything of like. You have that right in any workplace to discuss both the conditions of your workplace, and that's not just like discrimination and harassment. I'm talking about safety. I'm talking about like ethics, and salary are all completely protected.
Really?
If you are being terminated or disciplined for these types of discussions, you should definitely speak to an attorney about possible retaliation, because that is a right that every employee has in the workplace.
Well, I appreciate this, because I feel like this was a great, empowering conversation for people who are listening. We've had so many people call in just to talk about things that have happened in the workplace. What should I do? And felt like there's nothing that they could do, but to know that these are the steps you could take. And one thing I want to say that I got from all of this is document. What is that app again?
Work receipts.
Work receipts.
Yes.
Period.
Document.
They bring the receipts.
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
reunion.
I think that might have been the inspiration for the name. But exactly. Document. Listen, 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 70%. That means most people, 70% of people are one paycheck away from missing their rent, not being able to put food on the table. So people are desperate to keep their jobs. Yeah. Which is another reason why I always tell my clients there are no friends at work. And I was like, no, I mean, it is.
That's a fact.
Because at the end of the day, we could all be cool. We can kiki it up as much as we want. But it's like, somebody's getting fired, or somebody's like, everybody's protecting their own. Because at the end of the day, my check is not going to pay for yours. Right. And my check is not going to pay for yours. So there is this idea of like protecting themselves and protecting their own. Documenting is one of those ways.
Yeah. One of my biggest takeaways is your word is enough. Yes. So hopefully that will encourage people. If anything is happening, speak up. How can they get in contact with you, or maybe somebody, a local lawyer or attorney? Like, what type of help resources are out there for people who only have their word?
Right. Fortunately, a majority of employment discrimination attorneys are contingency based, which means they will take your case without you having to pay any money up front.
Good to know for everyone listening.
And most of the time, consultations are free. It costs you nothing.
Right.
To call an attorney for a free consultation and figure out, say, is this a thing or is it not enough? If you get an attorney that cares. Because for us, particularly at Mesidor PLC, we are big with decline with dignity. I may not take your case because I have 6 attorneys at my firm. We can't take every case. Right. We have to pick and choose. But I'm not going to just decline you and leave you high and dry. You're going to walk away with resources. You're going to walk away with more information on how to pursue this yourself. You may even walk away with information on how to speak to the next attorney about what it is that you have going on. And if all attorneys do the same thing, then people would be a lot better off it. Because most of the time what they're like, oh, you don't have a text? Oh, sorry, I can't help you. I said, really? This person just opened up to you and said that their body was touched.
Right.
And you just said you don't have any proof. We're just going to leave them high and dry. Then what's the point? What's the point of being an attorney? Right? This is why I don't gatekeep. Because then our positions mean nothing. What's the point of being a Black woman attorney if I gatekeep?
Right, absolutely.
All my information, everything that's in here is available to all of you, and then some. All our sisters, brothers, on all sides.
When you think about policy, too, are there things that you would like to see happen?
Oh, yeah. There's so many things I would love to see happen. One thing that I would sure love to see happen is after you do all the hard work and you actually win the case and you get a jury verdict, I would love it if they couldn't send it back to the judge and say, Judge, we think the jury gave them too much. And the judge says, I think you're right. We're just going to slash it down. Oof. Remitter. So that's another thing that makes it very discouraging. You can go through all of that. Your
win.
word is enough.
Yeah.
You win. They believe you. They're on your side. They give you exactly how much you need for you to get your therapy and for you to be out of work for some time, for you to get yourself together. And then for the other side to say, you know what, we're going to prolong it even more.
Yeah, and I feel like everyone does that.
Exactly. In addition to the 2 years that it took you to even get to a jury verdict, now we're going to go to the judge and we're going to do a post-trial motion. And we're going to say to the judge, we think that they gave them too much, and the judge may say one person can undo what a jury just did. And I don't think that when you have a jury of 12 people who sit down and look at your client in their eye, they see the tears in their face, they hear the breath when they testify, that their assessment of how much that person should get is going to be diminished by another judge that's just looking at a transcript. They don't know when she said yes, if she was bawling, crying yes.
Right.
They don't know whether she could barely contain herself. They don't know. So that is one thing that I would love to see changed, is that remitter would not be a pathway that defendants can use to try to lower
all the time.
All
too.
the time.
Right.
All the time. But you don't really hear about it.
Yeah.
You always hear about the big verdict. People will tell you, oh, didn't Tesla get 100 million something verdict for race discrimination? Yeah. Most people don't know that was slashed.
Yeah, they didn't have to pay it.
It was slashed. And then when they slash it to something so small. I've seen 7-figure awards go down to a couple of tens of thousands.
That's wild.
That is wild.
And that's discouraging. Can you imagine how that feels to somebody?
Right, exactly. And this is where, our continued conversation regarding DEI is important. Yeah. Who those judges are important.
Oh.
The fact that, is it an elected judge or is it an appointed judge for life? Mm-hmm. Appointed judges for life, they come from a particular pedigree. Right? The best schools, the best this, the best. And they may be a little bit removed. I don't want to say out of touch, right? But they may be a little bit more removed from the average worker's plight, versus somebody who may be elected. They got to grind for theirs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They have to grind for theirs.
They have to choose.
Exactly. They're more in sync with the people, so it's it's different. But you don't get to pick and choose.
This feels like a TV show. You know what I'm saying? We have reasonable doubt. What's the Marjorie Mesidor show? Right. Called? Just because I do feel like I could see all of these different scenarios playing out, and then see somebody getting a verdict, and I just see it in my head.
Right. It happens all the time.
Yeah,
it does.
But I also think watching shows like that is what helps people feel like they have more information and knowledge too.
Right. Absolutely. And the other thing that people don't talk about is, what does it mean to be representing a marginalized population while you yourself are a marginalized population, and the secondary trauma that comes from that.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
Because then you're fighting multiple battles, right? I'm not only fighting for you and your situation in the justice system. I'm fighting my adversary to be taken seriously. I may be fighting the judge to be taken seriously. I may be doing all of these things simultaneously. So this is why, again, gatekeeping benefits no one.
Absolutely not.
It benefits no one.
I know you have had some heartbreaking moments too.
Absolutely. There are cases that I still have nightmares about.
Wow.
There are people who are on the opposite side of this work, who are management side, who make it their business to punish those who bring up cases of discrimination and sexual harassment. So they punish them by using the process. They make sure that the litigation process is the most invasive, uncomfortable, raw, gut-wrenching thing, and that's how they make a name for themselves, and that's how they make a name for their companies, right? And this is why companies will hire them, because they'll know that somebody will think twice about bringing a sexual harassment claim, because they know that their attorney is going to try to gut them at the root, regardless of whether or not it's true.
Right.
And that to me is so disgusting, because you work with somebody, when you go through something with somebody, there's an affinity there. Sometimes the client comes to me and they're telling me things that they don't even tell their spouses.
You're like a therapist.
Exactly.
Also.
Exactly. They tell you things that they don't tell their spouses, their friends, their mothers. Sometimes none of those people even know it's coming out until you're getting ready to file a public case.
Sheesh.
And that's why deciding to file a public case is such a big, big, big decision.
Yeah. People act like it's not, just to even understand. And like you said earlier, when we were discussing why people may wait, it is also at a time when you may feel safe enough, strong enough, just in a space where you're like, okay, because it's a big deal. It is like, it can be life changing.
And I hear a lot of survivors saying they don't want to relive that. Like once they're out of the situation,
they want to move forward.
Right, they want to move forward. They
it.
definitely don't want to go to trial and have to talk about it. Like we saw what happened with Cassie when she was like 8-9 months pregnant and had to relive all of that. So there are a lot of different reasons why people don't, speak up at that time.
Right. Not only that, it's just like we don't even need to take it that far. You could be a regular person and you filed the lawsuit. You're out on a date and the person Googled you and they find your lawsuit.
Oh,
that's a good point.
Ooh, baby.
Look,
and
when
now, my friends go on dates, I'd be looking up. I said, "What's his name?"
Exactly.
All the information.
Exactly. And then now they have like information and like this. A lot of this stuff can be damning.
Yeah,
it can be damning.
It can be.
Right. And the law is evolving every day, requiring you to put more details, more facts in these pleadings, in these lawsuits.
Wow.
It used to be you could do a short and simple statement of the facts. So-and-so was working here, blah, blah, blah. They were asked out. They declined. They were retaliated against. You could use the very bare minimum. Now, they're asking you, no, we need more detail. We need specificity. So then now attorneys are throwing everything in there. And a lot of this stuff is intimate.
Yeah.
It is intimate. And even if it's something as small, and I'm saying small on a relative scale, right, as a forced kiss, right? Who wants the first introduction that you have with the person is to know that their boss forcibly kissed them?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, that's not.
Shouldn't you get to decide when that comes out and how that comes out?
Why are there so many requirements for those extra intimate details?
Because the law is saying that the defendant needs to be reasonably on notice on what it is that they're being accused about. They really need to know. They have to have an understanding. If I'm being sued for sexual harassment, what did I do that was sexually harassing? They want a full list, and they want everything. And when your complaint is not detailed, the presumption is it's made up.
Wow.
But when your complaint is more detailed, days. You guys remember that Cassie complaint?
Yeah.
That she filed against. Well, how many pages was that? That was.
She was telling all kind of stuff that I felt so.
Oh, right, yeah, because we were like,
sheesh.
I felt bad that she had to disclose all of those details, but you're saying she had to in order to make her case.
What I'm saying to you is the fact that her pleadings were so detailed, it becomes very hard to ignore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So remember, the other side is always going to be like, oh, she's just looking for money. She had a failed career and that's why she's coming out. And, they're always throwing these things when you're like, but page 75 says, and then what happens? People start fact checking. Mm-hmm. They're like, she was at that party and he was there too.
Right.
And I do remember when his car blew up and I do remember. And then because of all those details, then her word starts to get a little bit more.
Right. It's believable. For
exactly.
people.
It gets a little heavier.
Yeah.
This is why attorneys do it. Did she have to go to that painstaking detail in order for it not to be dismissed because there wasn't enough detail? Maybe not. I'm not going to, Monday night quarterback, right? Maybe not. But did it help?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody's like, even if she was lying about all whatever 200 pages.
She was giving her own.
Exactly.
Thing.
Right.
Exactly.
She didn't even. She put herself in a light that was not too flattering herself.
Exactly.
Like, why would she do that?
And what do we always say? Authenticity translates. Truth translate. You won't know what the American public will accept as being okay and not being okay, but just be you. Because one thing that we won't tolerate is that hypocrisy or lying or whatever. But if you're like, yeah, I did that and I did that too, but he definitely did this. And when this has happened, that gives more credibility.
Yeah.
It gives more credibility to say that it was X, Y, and Z.
What about the Adult Survivors Act? When that, I want to know what your thoughts were on that and what kind of workload you had during that time?
So during the time of the Adult Survivors Act, workloads for all plaintiff side attorneys definitely went up, because what it did is it reopened the statute of limitations on old claims and revived them for a short window of time. So anything from basically the beginning of time all the way through, so long as it was filed within this window and met this specific criteria, and I'm not going to, bore you with all the details, then you could at least bring the claim, right? Something like the ASA is so invaluable because it recognizes that people don't come forward because they're afraid. Because they're afraid of retaliation, they're afraid of not being believed, and because they're afraid that the people who did this to them have a way of hurting them again. But since Me Too in particular, and Me Too wasn't the only time there was like this reckoning, right? But Me Too, in maybe like our most recent history in particular, started happening. We realized, for those of us who didn't already know, how commonplace it is. Having conversations, I do this work, and I found out things about aunts and cousins. And I was like, but you know what? Why wouldn't you ever? People don't talk about it.
Right.
Because they're afraid of not being believed. So what this is doing is says, listen, we understand that it's difficult. We are reopening it for this period of time so that you can hold individuals accountable that perhaps you couldn't have. I remember having clients come to me with letters from people who assaulted them, apologizing, waiting after the statute of limitations because they knew
They were safe.
that they were safe. And they're just walking around with the person who assaulted them's letter, like, and it would be like in their purse pocket. It goes everywhere they go. And they're like, what can I do about this? Well, during the ASA, you could do something about it.
Right.
Unfortunately, now it's closed. It's sunsetted. It doesn't, and it doesn't look like they're
going to do a round two.
They're going to do a round two, but
that was a crazy time. But
it was a crazy time. But the thing is that people should be afraid and think twice.
You never know.
Exactly.
You think you got away with something?
Right.
Exactly. How about don't do it?
Yeah.
Because I always hear people saying, "Oh, it was the time period. Oh, everybody was like that. Oh," and I hate that when people say it's just what people did. It's just how we acted. It was just what the workplace was like during that time. And certain things are, if you're a stand-up individual, are never appropriate.
Right. I agree.
And you know.
Another thing I really don't like is when you hear people saying, well, you can't believe women. A lot of them are lying and they're going after the money.
Believe all women.
Do you have statistics that tell how many cases are actually not true or proven not true versus, is there like
because even if it's not true, that don't mean it's not true sometimes, right?
Exactly.
But people coming forward and saying I lied.
Right.
But
isn't it just like the
really
mass majority
percent.
are true, are legitimate?
Overwhelmingly, we're talking about less than 10%.
So less than 10%
we're
are
talking
proven
about less
untrue.
than 10%. I don't like to throw out numbers out there that I'm not like sure on, so I can't be like it's 8 or it's 2. But I know that it's less than 10%.
And I tell you what, there's way more people that'll never come forward than people who have come forward or people who, it's not true. I guarantee you that number is multitudes, exponentially more than people who have actually even come forward to tell their stories.
They say that 75% of individuals do not come forward about sexual harassment in the workplace, specifically 75%. So that means that no matter how much sexual harassment that HR departments know about, just know that there's actually 3 times more.
Wow.
All right. Well, I appreciate you. This was a whole powwow for us, but it does feel like we got some amazing, valuable information. Hopefully people who are listening, if there's something that you've been contemplating or some first steps you need to take, this is your sign to go ahead and make those first steps. And, I appreciate you for sharing all of this invaluable information with us.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for having me. Thank you, ladies, for shedding a light on this.
And you're going to continue to be a resource for us on Way Up.
Absolutely.
So
anything that you need.
We are grateful for this.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.